No quarterback competition in Tampa, Florida, sir. Nope. Joining us here on the Mercedes-Benz Vans phone line once again is our favorite. Certainly, he is a must-have go-to whenever the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are in the news, and they are absolutely that. With Julio Jones now in the fold and Tom Brady beginning his umpteenth training camp 1 week shy of his 45th birthday, the man who covers the Bucs in the NFL for the Tampa Bay Times and the host of Sports Day Tampa Bay, a podcast available where all podcasts are acquired, certainly on Apple Podcasts. Rick Stroud back here on the Mercedes-Benz Vans phone line. How you doing there, Rick?
I'm good, Rich. It's over. The Bucs are going to win the NFC.
Thank you.
We're going to Arizona, I think, on Christmas Day. Be back out there sometime in February. So, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, you could when you cover that game in Arizona in December, you're going to bring a box, just leave there in your hotel so you don't have to pack for the Super Bowl in February. That's good planning.
I'll do exactly that. I'll bring some extra clothes and store them at the hotel, and then figure out where my seat's going to be, and maybe walk the sideline a little bit, the way Tom will, when he goes out there. So, listen, who can't they get, right? Like, come on down. Like, it is unbelievable the recruiter that he is. You just enter the NFL transfer portal, and boom, you're in Tampa Bay. So. That's the way it works down here.
So when did Julio Jones first appear on Tampa's radar screen? We heard he said Tampa appeared on his radar screen the minute Tennessee said you're free to leave if you'd like. So what about Tampa's side of things, Rick?
You know what? I don't know him specifically. Obviously, he's a big name out there, and the big question is, if he can stay healthy. He's missed some 7 games each of the last 2 years, but really, Rich, I mean, this started sort of last year. I mean, you think about Tom Brady and unfinished business and sort of how the season ended. And the way it ended was they didn't have any receivers. So, you had Mike Evans kind of doing all the lifting. And at some point, Chris Godwin tore his ACL and his MCL on December 20th. Antonio Brown went crazy and started the striptease thing with the Jets, and he was gone. So you looked around, and, they're pulling Brashard Perriman off waivers. They're taking Cyril Grayson, who was a track star, off the practice squad. And these guys are winning games with walk-off touchdowns against Buffalo and the Jets. But you're like, you can't make a living this way, and especially Tom Brady. I mean, Tom Brady, wants to have options, and that's why Antonio was here for 2 years. So I think this is, as Todd Bowles said today, rather than wait for what is going to happen with positions, and it could happen to the receiver position again, go get the guy now who's the best available, instead of just taking whatever is out there, at midseason when you have to kind of spackle it together. So I think that's what this is. It's just trying to, add a little bit more to the roster and a little bit more. And let's face it, Julio's not coming in here trying to be the wide receiver 1 or maybe even wide receiver 2 or 3. We'll see, because we don't know Godwin's status against Dallas. But in a limited role in a red zone situation. And don't forget, they're trying to make up for the loss of production of Rob Gronkowski. You got to find a way to get those catches somewhere on this football team, and it might not be with Kyle Rudolph. So, this is just another part of the recipe.
So the question of who is Julio there for as insurance for may not even be, germane, because Godwin is not on PUP, right? So what is his status right now?
Well, he's not on the PUP, Rich, because if he was, he'd be limited to working with just the trainer, and they feel like he's a little ahead of that. Now, having said that, he wasn't really practicing today. He probably won't really practice that much tomorrow, but he can do individual drills. He can go out there and do walkthroughs and install. You can be with your team. That's the biggest thing. It's not just him and the trainer. So they're real pleased with his progress. There was a report that he was up to running 19 miles an hour, the other day, and that's straight ahead speed. There's obviously a lot of steps along the way when you're coming off an injury like that. The mental part of it is going to be huge. When will he be cleared for football in terms of, being in 7-on-7 or 11-on-11? How comfortable is he going to be with guys around his legs and his feet? And for my money, I don't think he'll play in the preseason, but you would like to see him, get tackled to the ground once or twice maybe before you hit Dallas, if he's even ready by then. I still think they say they're hopeful. I think they're more wishful about September 11th. But just the fact that he's not on PUP and neither is Levante David and some of the guys that didn't participate in the offseason is a good sign.
Well, so Russell Gage's acquisition, in my mind, is the number one under-the-radar acquisition of 2022 offseason. What a terrific receiver he proved to become in Atlanta. Yeah. And now here he is in Tampa with Brady as his trigger man. So what is the expectation level of Julio Jones? Like, what do they envision having signed a 33-year-old future Hall of Fame receiver, but with an injury history that's quite recent? What's their expectation level, Rick Stroud?
Well, they paid him some money. I mean, they gave him $6 million. You can make up to $8 million, so he's not playing for free. So you're going to have, you got to have some job for him. I think a lot will depend on just the health of Chris Godwin, and Julio Jones for that matter. I think you're going to have him on a pitch count. I mean, the goal would be to get him through, the entire season and the playoffs. Again, big red zone target for you when you got guys like him and, Mike Evans and Cam Braid and Kyle Rudolph and those guys. So you got a lot of guys you can use them that way, and it'll just depend on sort of how it plans out. But I'm with you. I mean, I think Russell Gage is an underrated player. He's an extremely good route runner. He tore these guys up enough in Atlanta, as did Julio, by the way. But the last 8 games last season, when Gage was sort of out there as the number one, he had 50 catches. So he was very productive even without much around him. And that's really the key, right? Like, you want to put as many great players out there around Tom Brady as possible and let him conduct the orchestra. And so, maybe this week, it's the trumpet gets the solo, and maybe next week it's the clarinet. I don't know. But I think they've all got to get on the same sheet of music, and that's really what Brady is about. He's about having options, and, he'll coach these guys up as much as Todd Bowles will or Byron Leftwich, and they'll figure out what they can do in what situations against which team. So it's really, I would say right now that, Mike Evans is clearly going to be their number one. I think early on, Gage might be their number 2, and maybe Julio the number 3, but that could change as far as, the order goes based on just the health of guys.
Rick Stroud from Tampa Bay Times here on the Rich Eisen Show. I ask this question, fully knowledgeable that I have not spent my entire NFL Network career somebody going low and hitting me in the knees, and I didn't miss a full month of last year's NFL schedule because nobody broke my ribs. But I asked the question, what happened with Gronk to you, sir? What happened with him?
He's a sore man, Rich. He's a beat-up guy. He's also a smart guy, and I don't think he gets enough credit for that. Gronk is exactly the guy you see on TV, which is great, right? Because he never has a bad day. They'll miss what he brings from an attitude standpoint as much as anything. He keeps things loose. He loves football. He loves to practice football. And, when I saw that injury he had against the Rams, it was devastating. They got him through 20 games or whatever it was in the Super Bowl year. He didn't miss any games, and he got himself into shape. And then last year, pretty early on in Los Angeles, he takes that hit. And, it wasn't just the ribs. All of a sudden, the back was a problem. He wasn't running as fast. He still came back and was a huge factor in games against the Colts and down the stretch for them. But I think he was reminded, Rich, of why he retired the first time. When he came back, and Tom talked him into it, I talked to his dad, Gordy, and he said the whole family looked around at each other and said, he's not going to play again. I can't fathom Rob ever playing again. And Tom got him back, and they won a Super Bowl, and he caught 2 tutties in a game. And so why not run it back? And I think he was reminded of the kind of life that he had, what he wants to get to. He's a smart businessman. He's got a lot of opportunity off the field. Now, if you ask me, we get to December and they're 4 games away from clinching the first seed, and they maybe, they got a couple injuries, and, Rob can't buy that insurance for USAA and calls his mom and says, "Where's my football pants?" I think you might show up. But that's not something they're planning on. And I think he is retired. I believe him this time. His girlfriend doesn't, so who am I to say? But But it would surprise me. But then, why would I be surprised? I'm in Tampa Bay where people retire and unretire every day.
Yeah, and Brady did exactly that just a few short months ago. What's the general sense walking around that building about Brady and his possibility of playing his final year? What do you think? What are they saying when you're walking down the hall?
1 year closer, whenever that is. We're 1 year closer to it. I think it's his final year in Tampa.
You do?
You know, I do think it's his final year here because he had an opportunity. If he wanted to, he could have said, hey, you know, let's extend this. Certainly he's, you know, pushed money down the line in terms of, you know, salary cap reasons and things like that, voidable years, all that language that I don't understand. But I do think that, you know, he wants to be a free agent. Now, what does that mean to a 45, soon-to-be 46-year-old Tom Brady? I'm not sure. I do know when he enters the offseason this year, and I don't know if it's going to end up with confetti or condolences. I really don't know. But however it ends up, you know, he's going to have somewhere to go. And what that means is $37.5 million a year waiting for him at Fox. So that's different than what he entered this offseason with, right, where it was just the big unknown. I think he looked around. He had some opportunity. I still believe that the Miami thing was viable. Somehow Sean Payton was a consideration down there. It didn't work out. He wanted to still play. He scrambled back. He got all his guys back because he signed on the eve, or you know, announced his return on the eve of free agency. So he's got a Super Bowl ready team. And after this year, I don't know, because the great ones never know when to put the keys on the table. But all I know is the guys can still swing. I was watching them today. It's unbelievable what he can do at 45. You know, and of course, you know, for a first practice, it was very sharp. He was sharp. I don't know how long. I don't know how long it goes, but it's a hell of a ride to watch. And I do think though that this is probably his last year, and he'll want to have his options open the way he did his final year in New England. He'll like to look around. If he's going to play, he can play anywhere. That'll have him, and if he's not, he's got a broadcasting job.
Well, what would that Miami thing have looked like? I mean, where he goes there after saying I'm done without really saying the retirement word in his Instagram post, or would that have done? Yeah. Would that have happened before then, and then Miami would have had to call, you know, Jason Lighton offered some form of compensation? Is that we talk about it a lot, and but I still have never really heard how it would be mapped out. How would that have actually worked? Brady winding up in Miami with Sean Payton as his coach. How would that have worked?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure it could have worked, and that's probably why it didn't work, right? But I think that the Bucs had to move on. You know, at the combine, I'm talking to Bruce Arians, and he's still the coach,
right?
Or at least we thought he was going to be,
right?
And he's saying, you know, hey, we have to go on as if Tom's not going to be here. And the plan was, you know, they were going to have Blaine Gabbert and Kyle Trask battle it out, and they had 9 quarterbacks on that list that they were looking at, including Deshaun Watson, who got crossed off pretty quickly by ownership, from what I understand. You know, Russell Wilson was on that. I mean, there's a lot of the guys. We all know the names, right? So they were planning on going forward, whether it was with the guys they had. And it was most likely going to be Gabbert and Trask. But in that instance, you know, how many free agents come back? You know, are they a 5-win team? Are they a 6-win team? As far as Brady goes, you know, there's a lot of speculation in the timing of that thing. Sean Payton, I think, factors in it somehow. You know, the Dolphins were interested in interviewing him. The Saints said he could not after he, you know, was retiring, resigning, whatever. And then, of course, you had the lawsuit on the day that Tom actually did retire, which was weird timing. So I don't know in the end how viable it was for him to play. And whether or not it was ownership, I just don't know. But he was looking at everything, and we know one of their forever houses is down there in Miami, so it makes sense. He loves Florida. At some point, he's going to live there in South Florida. So I just don't know. You know, and I'm not sure he knew, and he was kind of exploring all that. And then whatever might have been viable in Miami suddenly wasn't. And that's when I think, he had been talking to the Bucs all along with Jason Light. They had a plan if he wanted to come back, and he executed that right before the start of free agency, and they were able to get so many of their players to return.
Rick Stroud, a fascinating team. We didn't even talk about Leonard Fournette's water weight, which might be the name of my fantasy team this year. We didn't even talk about that. That's like an annual tradition, it seems. So let's get you back on right before the season. Let's do this again soon. Thanks for the time, Rick.
Let's do it, Rich. Thanks for having me.
You
buddy.
got it. At NFL Stroud on Twitter. I follow him. You should as well. That's the great Rick Stroud here on The Rich Eisen Show.